Laura kept her eyes on the floor, counting the cracks in the marble as the bonding ceremony began. She'd learned long ago that invisibility was survival. The grand hall of the Moonstone Palace buzzed with anticipation as high-born females in silk and jewels positioned themselves before the dais, each hoping to be chosen by the royal Pups as their trusted guardian. Laura pressed herself against a stone pillar in the servants' section, her rough gray dress a stark contrast to the finery around her. She didn't belong here. She never belonged anywhere. But then, silence. The kind that makes your skin prickle with dread. When she finally looked up, 3 pairs of luminous amber eyes were fixed on her. Prince Matthias, Princess Alara, and Prince Corin, the royal Pups who hadn't spoken a word in 2 years, who hadn't shifted since their mother's brutal murder, were walking toward her. Not toward the noble ladies, not toward the decorated warriors or wealthy merchants' daughters, toward her. The Omega with scars on her wrists and nightmares in her eyes. The crowd parted like water as the children moved with eerie synchronization, their small feet padding across the polished floor. Laura's heart hammered against her ribs. This was wrong. This was impossible. She tried to step back, but the pillar blocked her escape. Then they were there, standing before her with faces so solemn and ancient they seemed to carry the weight of lifetimes. 3 small hands reached for hers simultaneously. The moment their skin touched, light exploded behind Laura's eyes. Visions of stars and ancient songs, of 3 small souls crying out in darkness until they found her beacon. Ours, they whispered in perfect unison, and the words shattered through the hall like thunder. Then Alpha King Theron rose from his throne, and Laura's world ended. If you believe no one deserves to be thrown away like Laura was, hit subscribe. Only people like those cruel nobles who mocked her won't. Comment where you're watching from and let me know you're on Laura's side, not theirs. The guard's grip on Laura's arms was bruising as they dragged her through the castle corridors. Behind her, the grand hall erupted in chaos, nobles shouting accusations of witchcraft and dark magic. Someone spat at her feet. Another called for her immediate execution. Laura kept her head down, her body limp with the resignation of someone who'd been dragged to punishment before. The North Tower loomed ahead, its blackened stones a testament to centuries of housing prisoners who rarely emerged. They threw her into a cell that smelled of damp stone and despair. The door slammed with a finality that echoed in her bones. Laura curled into the corner, wrapping her arms around her knees, and waited for whatever came next. Hours later, soft footsteps approached. An elderly woman entered, her silver hair braided with healing charms. Royal healer Cassia set down her leather satchel and knelt before Laura with a gentleness that made her flinch. "I won't hurt you, child. I need to examine you for traces of dark magic." Cassia's hands were warm as they tilted Laura's face toward the dim light. Her examination was thorough but kind, fingers pausing over the raised scars on Laura's wrists, the faded burns along her collarbone, the marks of a hard life written in pain across her skin. "Child," Cassia whispered, horror and pity mixing in her voice. "What horrors have you survived?" Laura said nothing. There were no words adequate for those memories. "There's no dark magic here," Cassia announced to the guards. "Only old wounds and older sorrows." Then he came. Alpha King Theron filled the doorway like a storm given form. He was massive, well over 6 feet of coiled muscle and barely restrained violence. His storm-gray eyes blazed with fury as he dismissed Cassia with a curt nod and stepped into the cell. The space shrank around him. "What enchantment have you woven around my children?" His voice was gravel and smoke, each word a threat. Laura forced herself to meet his gaze, and the world tilted. The mate bond snapped into place like a lightning strike to the chest. Every nerve in her body screamed recognition. Mine. The word echoed through her soul in a voice that wasn't quite hers. She watched his eyes widen in shock, felt his wolf surge forward with a howl of claim and possession that made the air between them crackle with electricity. For one heartbeat, she saw naked longing flash across his face. Then his expression shuddered, going cold as winter stone. "I've done nothing but exist," Laura whispered, her voice hoarse. "If that's a crime to you, then punish me." Theron stepped back as if she'd burned him. His hands clenched into fists, fighting his own wolf's demands. "This bond is a mistake," he said, each word carved from ice. "It will never be acknowledged." He turned and left, the door slamming behind him. Laura pressed her hand to her chest where the bond pulsed like a second heartbeat, and felt something inside her crack. 4 days passed in the North Tower. Laura counted them by the thin strips of sunlight that crept through the barred window, painting golden lines across the stone floor. Her body ached less each day, old bruises fading to yellow, though the deeper wounds never really healed. She spent the hours in silence, trying not to think about 3 pairs of amber eyes or the bond that pulsed steadily in her chest like a second heart she couldn't silence. On the 4th night, she woke to the sound of small feet padding across stone. 3 shadows slipped through her cell door, which somehow stood open despite the guards outside. Laura's breath caught as moonlight revealed their faces. Prince Matthias, tall for 8 years old with his father's gray eyes. Princess Ilara, 6 and fierce, her dark hair wild around her shoulders. And little Corin, barely 5, clutching a worn, stuffed wolf against his chest. They didn't ask permission. They simply climbed onto her thin mattress and curled against her like puppies, seeking warmth. Laura froze, terrified to move, terrified to breathe wrong and shatter whatever fragile magic had brought them here. "Your light calls to us," Ilara whispered, her small hand finding Laura's scarred wrist. "We hear it in our sleep. It sings to our wolves." Matthias pressed his forehead against Laura's shoulder, his voice breaking. "Mama's gone. She's been gone so long, but you feel like home, like safety. Like the dark doesn't win when you're near." Corin said nothing at all. He simply gripped Laura's hand with surprising strength and sighed, a sound of such pure contentment it made her chest ache. "I can't be what you need," Laura whispered into the darkness, even as her arms instinctively wrapped around them. "I'm too broken. I'm nobody. I'm nothing." "You're ours," all 3 said in unison, and their wolves flickered behind their eyes, gold and ancient and certain. For the first time in 2 years, the children slept without nightmares. Laura held them through the night, feeling their steady breathing, their absolute trust. Something fierce and protective uncoiled in her chest, something that had nothing to do with bonds or magic and everything to do with 3 small souls who'd chosen her in their darkest hour. Dawn came too soon. The cell door crashed open. Theron stood in the doorway, flanked by guards, his face a mask of fury. But when he saw them, his children sleeping peacefully for the first time since their mother's murder, something in his expression cracked. Ilara woke first, sitting up with fearless eyes fixed on her father. "She's ours, Papa. Her soul found us in the dark when no one else could reach us. We need her." Theron's jaw clenched. His eyes met Laura's over his daughter's head, and the bond between them flared hot and desperate. She watched him war with himself, watched emotion and duty tear him apart. "This changes nothing," he commanded, but his voice broke on the last word. He turned and left them there, and Laura held 3 children closer while hope, dangerous and defiant, took root in her shattered heart. The summons came at sunset. Two guards escorted Laura through corridors she'd never seen, past tapestries depicting ancient battles and victories, until they reached a heavy oak door carved with wolves in full hunt. The king's private study. Her pulse hammered in her throat as they knocked and retreated, leaving her alone. "Enter," Theron's voice commanded from within. The study was all dark wood and leather, walls lined with maps marked in red ink showing troop movements and border threats. Weapons hung in careful display, swords and axes that had tasted blood. But what stopped Laura's breath was the portrait above the fireplace, a beautiful woman with kind eyes and a warrior's stance. 3 small children gathered at her feet. Seraphina, the late Luna Queen. Theron stood with his back to her, staring into the fire. "My children sleep now, peacefully, without nightmares, because of you." He turned, and the firelight carved harsh shadows across his face. "I need to understand why." "I don't have answers," Laura said quietly. "I'm as confused as you are." Seraphina was everything. His voice went raw, stripped of its usual command. "A warrior, a Luna, the heart of this pack. Shadow Fang assassins came while I was 3 days away at the northern front. They burned through our defenses like they knew exactly where she'd be, exactly when I'd be gone." His hands clenched. "She died because I wasn't there, because I failed her, because I chose duty over protection, and it cost me everything." Laura saw it then, the guilt that ate at him like poison. She recognized it because she wore the same chains. "I know what it means to survive when you should have died," she said softly. "The guilt is its own prison. You wake up every day wondering why you're still breathing when they're not, why you got to live when you failed to save them." Theron's eyes snapped to hers, storm gray and suddenly vulnerable. He took a step toward her, his hand lifting as if to touch the scars on her wrist, hovering just inches from her skin. The bond between them hummed with shared pain and recognition. "You understand," he whispered. "More than you know." The moment stretched between them. Fragile and electric. Then boots pounded in the hallway. A guard burst through the door, his face ashen. "My king, Shadow Fang raiders have attacked the western border. They've burned 3 villages." The guard swallowed hard. "They sent a message. They want the Radiant Girl. They said deliver her or watch your kingdom burn." The temperature in the room dropped. Theron's expression went cold and deadly, but Laura felt ice flood her veins for a different reason. Radiant Girl. They knew what she was. They'd always known. "They're not here for territory," Laura breathed, the truth crystallizing with horrible clarity. "They're here for me. They've been hunting me all along." Theron turned to her, and in his eyes she saw calculation, protection, and something fierce that made the bond flare hot between them. "Then they'll have to go through me first." The War Council assembled within the hour. Laura was brought to the great hall where the kingdom's highest-ranking wolves gathered around a massive table scarred with centuries of strategic planning. She felt their stares like brands on her skin, judgment and calculation in every eye. Theron sat at the head, his presence commanding silence as Elder Miriam, the pack's historian, spread ancient texts across the table. 15 years ago, the purge began. Miriam's weathered voice filled the hall. The Radiants were a bloodline of healers with light magic in their veins. They could cure corruption, reverse shadow magic's madness, heal wounds that should have been fatal. They were humanity's greatest defense against darkness. She paused, her eyes finding Laura. They were also systematically slaughtered, every man, woman, and child, erased from existence. Miriam opened a text to an illustration that made Laura's blood run cold. A figure wreathed in golden light, and on their inner wrist, a starburst scar identical to the one Laura had carried all her life. The mark she'd been told was just an old burn. "Your parents were radiants," Miriam continued gently. "They hid you with a rogue pack, paid them everything they had to keep you secret and safe. Then they went to face the hunters, hoping to draw them away from you." The elder's voice cracked. "Your parents didn't abandon you, child. They died to hide you from this very moment." The room spun. Laura gripped the table's edge as grief, hot and sharp, tore through her chest. They'd loved her. They'd died for her. And she'd spent 15 years believing herself unwanted. High Commander Gareth slammed his fist on the table. "Then the choice is simple. One Omega life versus thousands of pack members. We cannot win a war against Shadowfang while protecting her. Surrender the girl and negotiate peace." "No." Theron's voice cut like a blade. He rose to his full height, power radiating from him in waves that made even Gareth step back. "She is under my protection. Any who touch her answer to me. My king, be reasonable. I've made my choice. She stays. We fortify our defenses and prepare for war. This council is dismissed." The room emptied in tense silence. Laura remained, her legs too unsteady to move. Theron approached, and for once his expression wasn't cold or angry. It was resolved. "Why?" Laura's voice was barely a whisper. "You don't even want this bond. You've made that clear, so why protect me? Why risk everything?" Theron was quiet for a long moment, his storm-gray eyes searching hers. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion he could no longer fully hide. "Because my children chose you. Because in 4 days you've given them something I couldn't in 2 years. Peace. Hope. A reason to smile again." He stepped closer, and the bond between them pulsed with warmth. "And because you are not a sacrifice. You are not a bargaining chip. You are a person who has survived horrors and still found the capacity to love my children with a fierceness that humbles me." Laura felt tears burn behind her eyes. "I don't know how to be what they need." "What you might need. Neither do I," Theron admitted. "But we'll figure it out, together." Laura's just discovered the truth about her bloodline, and Shadowfang is closing in. If you can't stand hunters like Shadowfang who destroy innocent families, drop a comment saying "Justice for the Radiants." Hit subscribe if you believe Laura deserves to reclaim what they tried to steal from her. The battle is coming. Laura woke from a dead sleep with ice flooding her veins. Something was wrong. The bond she'd formed with the children screamed danger, a primal warning that sent her stumbling from her chambers in nothing but her nightgown. Guards shouted at her to stop, but she was already running, bare feet slapping against cold stone as she flew toward the royal nursery. She burst through the door, and time fractured. 3 small wolves, silver, bronze, and black, had their backs to the wall, snarling at 4 figures cloaked in shadow magic. The assassins moved like smoke given form, blades glinting with poison. The children had shifted for the first time since their mother's death, their wolves fierce but small, so impossibly small against trained killers. One assassin lunged toward Corin, blade raised high. Laura didn't think. She threw herself between them, and something inside her chest detonated. Golden light exploded from her palms like a star going supernova. It was pure and burning and ancient, older than memory, a power that sang through her blood with recognition. The light slammed into the assassins, and where it touched shadow magic, the darkness screamed and dissolved. The attackers shrieked, their forms destabilizing as the radiant power burned through their corruption. They fled, vanishing through windows in wisps of dissipating smoke. Laura collapsed to her knees, gasping, her hands still glowing with fading light. The 3 small wolves rushed to her, shifting mid-stride back into children who crashed into her with desperate sobs. "Mama! Mama!" they cried, all three at once, their small bodies trembling as they burrowed into her arms. "I've got you," Laura whispered, her voice breaking as she gathered them close. "You're safe. I've got you." The nursery door crashed open. Theron stood there in battle armor, sword drawn, eyes wild with panic that shifted instantly to shock. He stared at Laura, at the fading golden glow that still clung to her skin like stardust, at his children safe and whole in her protective embrace. "You're truly one of them," he breathed, awe and something like fear mixing in his voice. "A radiant, the legends, the power, it's all real." Laura met his eyes over Matthias's dark hair, over Alara's tear-stained face, over Corin's grip that threatened to crack her ribs. Her whole body shook with exhaustion and adrenaline and the terror of what she'd just done, what she'd just become. "I don't know what I am," she said, her voice raw and honest. "I don't understand this power or where it came from or why it chose now to wake up." She tightened her hold on the children, feeling their heartbeats against hers, feeling the fierce maternal love that had unlocked something primal in her soul. "I only know they're mine to protect. And I will burn the world to ash before I let anyone take them from me." Theron crossed the room in 3 strides and knelt before them, his large hand cupping Laura's glowing cheek with a gentleness that made her breath catch. The mate bond surged between them, no longer denied or fought, but acknowledged in its raw and terrifying truth. "Then we protect them together," he said. "No more fighting this. No more pretending we're not exactly what we are to each other." Laura's new chambers were connected to the royal nursery by a private door that the children used freely and often. She woke most mornings to Corin climbing into her bed before dawn, his small body seeking warmth and reassurance. Then Alara would tumble in, chattering about dreams of running through forests with her wolf finally whole and happy. Matthias took longer, standing in the doorway as if asking permission until Laura pulled back the covers in invitation. The days developed a rhythm that felt like healing. She braided Alara's wild dark hair while the girl recited lessons, fingers gentle as she worked through tangles. In the training yard, she watched Matthias practice sword stances, correcting his grip with the knowledge of someone who'd learned to fight to survive. When nightmares still came for Corin in the dark hours, she held him and hummed songs she didn't remember learning, melodies that glowed faintly golden in the shadows. "Mama, can we have honey cakes for breakfast?" Alara asked one morning, the title falling from her lips as naturally as breathing. Laura's heart clenched with love so fierce it hurt. "If Cook allows it, little star." Their first shared meal as a family was awkward but threaded with hope. The children chattered and laughed, passing plates and stealing bites from each other. Laura watched them with wonder, hardly believing this was her life now. Theron sat at the head of the table, quiet but present, his eyes tracking every interaction with an intensity that made the mate bond hum. "Papa, why don't you sit with us and Mama more?" Alara asked with a child's innocent directness. "You're always in your study or with the soldiers." Theron's smile was strained, not quite reaching his eyes. "I have duties, little star. A kingdom to protect." But Laura felt his longing through the bond that strengthened daily despite his resistance. She felt him watching from doorways as she played with the children in the gardens. Felt him pause outside the nursery when she sang them to sleep. Felt the war raging inside him between grief and the pull towards something new. One evening, she found him on a balcony overlooking the gardens where the children practiced shifting under the watchful eyes of guards. 3 small wolves tumbled and played, healthy and whole in ways they hadn't been for 2 years. Laura stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken words. "They love you," Theron said finally, his voice rough. "They need you in ways I couldn't provide. You've given them back their wolves, their joy, their childhood." "They gave me something too," Laura replied softly. "A reason to stop hiding, a purpose beyond survival." He turned to look at her then, and the naked longing in his storm-gray eyes made her breath catch. The mate bond flared hot and desperate between them, no longer deniable. "And you?" Laura whispered, the question she'd been afraid to ask. "What do you need?" Theron's hand lifted, hovering near her face as if touching her might break whatever control he still maintained. "I need to stop being afraid," he admitted, "but I don't know how." Laura found him in his study long past midnight, staring at reports he wasn't reading. She closed the door behind her with enough force that he looked up, startled. "We need to talk," she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I can feel your wolf clawing at the bond. I feel you watching us, wanting to be part of what we're building, and then pulling away like we're poison." "It has to stop." Theron's jaw clenched. "You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me." He surged to his feet, papers scattering. "My wolf knows you're our mate. Every instinct screams to claim you, to complete this bond, to never let you out of my sight. But I swore on Seraphina's grave I would never—" "Never what?" Laura interrupted, stepping closer. "Never let yourself feel again? Never let those children have a complete family? Never allow yourself to be happy because she can't be?" "I'm terrified." The words exploded from him, raw and broken. "What if I fail you like I failed her? What if I'm not enough again? What if loving you costs me everything and I survive it again, hollow and destroyed?" Laura crossed the space between them, grabbing his face in both hands and forcing him to meet her eyes. "Then we fail together. We face it together. But I will spend every breath I have protecting those children. Our children. And that includes protecting them from a father who's so afraid of loss, he's choosing to live half dead." "Laura, I'm just as terrified," she confessed, her voice breaking. "I'm an Omega with scars and trauma and a power I barely understand. I have no idea how to be a Luna or a mother or a mate to a king. But those 3 children chose me, and I chose them back. And now I'm choosing you, even though you're stubborn and grief-stricken and pushing me away." Theron's control shattered. He kissed her with a desperation that stole her breath, his hands tangling in her hair as 2 years of denial and want came crashing down. The mate bond exploded between them, no longer a pulse but a wildfire, burning away every wall and pretense until they were simply 2 broken people choosing to be whole together. Laura kissed him back with equal ferocity, pouring every ounce of love and defiance and hope into it. This was claiming and being claimed, choosing and being chosen. 2 souls finally admitting what had been true from the moment amber eyes met gray. "Does this mean Laura is really our mama now?" They broke apart to find 3 small figures in the doorway. Matthias, Elara, and Corin stood there in their night clothes, hope shining in their eyes. Theron looked at Laura, and she saw everything in his gaze. Love, fear, determination, promise. "Yes," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "If she'll have us." "All of us." Tears streamed down Laura's face as she nodded. "Forever." The children ran to them, and for one perfect moment, they were simply a family, whole and healing and home. Then war horns shattered the night, their urgent call echoing across the castle walls. Shadowfang had arrived. The view from the battlements stole Laura's breath. Shadowfang's army sprawled across the valley like a living darkness, thousands of corrupted wolves whose eyes glowed with unnatural red light. The shadow magic that twisted them was visible even from this distance, black tendrils writhing around their forms like parasites. A voice boomed across the field, amplified by dark magic until it shook the very stones. "Give me the radiant. End this war before it truly begins. She is all I want. Spare your people this suffering." Alpha Draven stood at the army's head, a figure wreathed in shadow so thick it seemed to devour the moonlight around him. Theron grabbed Laura's arm, his grip urgent. "You will stay in the safe room with the children. Guards will protect you there." "No." Laura pulled free, her eyes blazing. "Your war became mine the moment those children chose me. I'm not hiding while people die for me." "Laura, I'm a Radiant, a healer. I can help the wounded. You need every advantage you have." Their eyes locked in a battle of wills, but they both knew she'd already won. Theron pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "Stay behind the lines. Promise me." "I promise." The battle erupted with savage fury. Theron shifted into his massive black wolf, larger than any other. A king in truth as he led the defense. Laura watched him crash into the enemy lines with deadly grace before turning to the makeshift infirmary. Wounded soldiers poured in, and she let her radiant power flow, golden light knitting torn flesh and purging shadow corruption from infected wounds. Hours blurred together in blood and desperation. The castle walls held, but barely. Laura moved from soldier to soldier, her power growing stronger with each use, more controlled. She could feel Theron through the bond, fighting with everything he had. Then ice flooded her veins. The bond with the children screamed danger, a different quality than the general chaos of battle. This was specific. This was targeted. Laura's head snapped up, understanding crystallizing with horrible clarity. "The children!" she gasped. "This whole attack, it's a diversion. He's going for the children." She ran, abandoning the infirmary, following the golden thread of connection that bound her to 3 small souls. Guards shouted after her, but she was already gone, tearing through castle corridors with her heart in her throat. The safe room. She had to reach the safe room. Laura crashed through the door and her worst nightmare materialized before her. Alpha Draven stood in the center of the nursery, shadow magic coiling around him like living serpents. Matthias, Elara, and Corin were backed into the corner, their small wolves out and snarling defiance despite their terror. The guards lay unconscious, or worse, crumpled against the walls. Draven turned to face her, and his smile was terrible. "There you are, little Radiant. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come." His eyes, black as voids, fixed on her with hunger. "Your parents were clever, hiding you all those years. But children always reveal themselves eventually when something they love is threatened." Laura stepped between him and the children, golden light already gathering in her palms. "Let them go. I'm what you want." "Finally," Draven breathed. "You understand." If you believe people like Laura, the overlooked, the scarred, the invisible, deserve their moment to shine, hit that subscribe button. Only the haters who wanted her to stay broken won't. Comment, "She deserved this," if you stood by her from the start. Draven moved like smoke, crossing the room before Laura could blink. His hand closed around Alara's throat, lifting the small girl as she struggled. A blade materialized in his other hand, pressed against her skin. "Your parents hid you well, little Radiant, scattered you among rogues where no one would think to look. But the hunt ends now." "Please," Laura begged, golden light building in her palms. "Let her go. Take me. I'll come willingly." Something flickered in Draven's black eyes. Pain, ancient and soul deep. "I didn't want this curse," he said, his voice breaking beneath the shadow magic's corruption. "The darkness poisoned me when I tried to save my own mate. She was a Radiant, you see. They murdered her during the purge, and when I tried to use shadow magic to bring her back, it consumed me instead." His grip on Elara tightened. "For 15 years I've been killing what I loved most. hunting down the last traces of the power that could have saved her. The irony is exquisite, don't you think? Laura felt it then, through her radiant senses. Beneath the corruption, beneath the monster, was a man drowning in darkness, begging for release he couldn't ask for. "Mama," Matthias's voice came through their bond, strong despite his fear. "We believe in you." "Let your light shine," Corin whispered. "We're not afraid," Ilara managed, even with the blade at her throat. "We know what you are. You're our light." Something inside Laura ignited. Her scars began to glow like constellations across her skin, each one a testament to survival, to choosing life again and again despite the pain. Power flooded through her, not wild like before, but controlled, purposeful, ancient. "I am their mother," Laura said, her voice resonating with power older than kingdoms. "I am their pack. I am their light." She stepped forward, golden radiance building until the room blazed like dawn. "And you, Alpha Draven, you can be free." She released the power not as a weapon but as salvation. Radiant light flooded the nursery, washing over Draven like a cleansing tide. The shadow magic shrieked and dissolved, burning away under the purity of her gift. Draven dropped Ilara as he fell to his knees, the corruption that had twisted him for 15 years finally breaking apart. His eyes cleared, returning to their natural amber. His face, suddenly human and devastated, crumpled as tears streamed down his cheeks. "I can see her again," he whispered in wonder. "My mate." "She's waiting for me." He looked at Laura with gratitude so profound it hurt. "Thank you. Tell them all. I'm sorry." Then Alpha Draven, finally free, finally human, died with peace on his face. The shadow magic sustaining his army collapsed. Through the windows, Laura watched as thousands of corrupted wolves fell, their curse lifted, their souls finally released. The door exploded inward. Theron crashed through in human form, wild-eyed and desperate, taking in the scene. Laura stood glowing with fading light, 3 children racing into her arms, Draven's body peaceful on the floor. "You're safe," Theron breathed, gathering them all into his embrace. "You're all safe." Laura smiled, exhausted and whole. "We're home." 3 weeks later, under the full moon, Laura stood before the pack in a gown of silver and gold. Theron took her hand, his voice carrying across the gathered wolves. "You are my mate, my Luna, my heart. You gave me back my children and taught me to love again." Laura's response was fierce with joy. "You gave me a family. You gave me a home. You gave me the courage to shine." "Mama! Papa!" 3 voices chorused as small bodies launched themselves into the embrace. The kingdom's new Luna held her family close, radiant and whole at last.